Good morning, everybody. My name is Bruce Jones. I'm the Vice President and the Director of the Foreign Policy Program here at Brookings. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here today for the launch of Cheng Li's book, Chinese Politics in the Xi Jinping Era, Reassessing Collective Leadership. Of course, we're at a moment when lots of people are reassessing leadership in lots of different countries. And as the Trump administration begins its tenure in Washington, the eyes of the world are on us. Across the globe, questions abound about America's role and how it will proceed. And front and center in that discussion is the U.S. China relationship, which is clearly in play. And today and going forward, Brookings scholars will continue to catalyze a discussion around the important geopolitical and geoeconomic issues in that relationship and its implications for the world in which we live. And to help us with that discussion today, we're delighted to have the former Secretary of Commerce, the Honorable Barbara Franklin, join us for this morning's keynote address. She'll share insights from her extensive experience working directly with Chinese leadership and the U.S. leadership. Her trailblazing career, I think that's the only way you could describe it, touched almost every sector: corporate, governmental, academic, entrepreneurial. She's an expert on corporate governance, on auditing, financial reporting practices, and on trade. She currently serves as president and CEO of Barbara Franklin Enterprises, an international consulting firm. Her extensive experience and expertise first drew the attention of President Nixon, and she served also for President George W. Bush as the 29th Secretary of Commerce. And in that role, I think many of you will recall her historic trade mission to China, which was instrumental in reopening commercial relationships between the two nations. I'm trying hard to avoid already asking her a question about our current trade policy, but we'll no doubt come to that. Needless to say, we're looking forward to her thoughts on the U.S. China relationship. And following her remarks, Cheng Li will present his book, Chinese Politics in the Xi Jinping Era, Reassessing Collective Leadership. As you know, he's a senior fellow here at Brookings and the director of our Thornton China Center. His work highlights trends in Chinese elite politics and also shares his forecasts about leadership change, potential leadership change at the upcoming 19th Party Congress. He's a China scholar who needs no introduction. His book, which I have to say I think is a masterwork, and I don't use that term lightly or commonly, has solidified his status as what Andrew Nathan recently called our leading expert in the Chinese political elite and a leading Chinese scholar in general in the United States. We're very proud of Cheng Li and of his book. I frequently travel to China with Cheng Li, and everywhere we go, we meet very senior Chinese leadership. And what happens is we have a discussion, and then they kind of push me aside and they pull Cheng Li over and say, "Can you tell me what's really going on?" It's quite impressive to watch. So we're very honored to have him here, to have him as the director of our China Center, and I'm very proud to be a small part of helping launch his book. But for now, following his talk, we'll have a broader panel discussion on Sino-American relations with David Lampton, Richard McGregor, and Dennis Wilder, and I'm very pleased that our own non-resident fellow and a staff writer at The New Yorker, Evan Osnos, will moderate the panel today. So with that, thank you all for being here, and please join me in welcoming the Honorable Barbara Franklin.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Bruce, for that generous introduction. I'm delighted to be here, and I have to tell you, speaking of momentous change, I just wonder what has happened between the time I left home and arrived here. So this promises to be a year of momentous challenge and change, possibly change, in the relationship between the United States and China. And today I'm particularly talking about the economic side of that relationship, and a relationship that I believe is the most consequential bilateral relationship in the world. Now, it's obvious, to state the obvious, on the U.S. side, the change is the election of President Trump. And on the Chinese side, Cheng Li will tell you what changes are going to emanate from the 19th Communist Party Congress in the fall. But first, to think back for a minute about the Sino-U.S. economic relationship. It has grown exponentially since 1979. through both Democratic and Republican administrations. From a modest beginning, two-way trade is well over $500 billion. And I'm proud to have played a role in restarting that economic relationship when President Bush sent me, after he lost the election in 1992, to both remove a ban on government-to-government contact, but also to restart the U.S. China Joint Commission on Commerce and Trade, JCCT, getting the economic relationship started again after a rather moribund few years. And now, of course, I think we all know that China is the third largest market for U.S. products and services, a $400 billion market that many think should be even larger. And according to a new study prepared for the U.S. China Business Council by Oxford Economics, the trade relationship, two-way trade relationship, supports roughly 2.6 million American jobs. Now, turning to President Trump, who as a candidate said a lot of things about China. He pointed to the trade deficit, more than $300 billion in China's favor, and he says that's a drag on U.S. GDP growth. He said the U.S. has lost millions of jobs to China. He said China engages in unfair trade practices and currency manipulation and has threatened new tariffs on Chinese products. I'm sure we've all seen all of that stuff. 45% is one of the figures that was mentioned. In other words, he is calling for a rebalance in the U.S.-China trade relationship. Now, concurrently, I am fascinated and encouraged by President Xi Jinping's recent speech, particularly the one at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he lauded, quote, economic globalization and free trade and investment. He had some wonderfully poetic language in that speech. It's an absolute masterpiece. And the quote I particularly liked is this one. Pursuing protectionism is just like locking oneself in a dark room. While wind and rain may be kept outside, so are light and air. Wonderful quote. Now, the U.S. business community has also applauded President Xi's comprehensive agenda for economic reform that was put forth at the 18th Communist Party Congress in 2013. Yet so far, we don't see too much specific progress. A key question here, do both leaders mean what they say? Now, I'm not going to pretend to read the mind of either one. I'm going to leave the Chinese side to Jen Li, but I am going to comment about President Trump, based not on reading his mind, but based on what I'm seeing, hearing, and watching him do so far. And what I also know from decades of participation in the political process here is that campaign rhetoric often dies down and disappears once the reality of actually having to govern sets in for a new president. This time, however, I think something is different. When he was running for president, President Trump gave voice to the frustration and anger felt by millions of Americans who felt let down by the ruling establishments of both political parties. And they elected him because I think they thought he was serious about making the changes he advocated. And his inaugural address last week underscored what he had been saying in the campaign. And I would note that at one point in that address, he said forcefully, "I will not let you down." So what I think is different this time is the sheer determination with which President Trump, his cabinet, and advisors will pursue the changes he campaigned about. And change in trade relationships was one big issue, and of course that includes the rebalance with China. And we can see already what he's been doing, talking about renegotiating NAFTA and then pulling us out of the TPP just yesterday by executive order. So further evidence to support the determination I believe I see is the appointments he has made and the views that those people have expressed. Now, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, for one, and I know you here at Brookings know him since he has been a trustee for some time. He is to have a big role in trade policy, and he's been quite outspoken about the things he believes China isn't doing properly. And if anyone has read the transcript or watched his confirmation hearing, you will have seen and heard a lot of those comments. There's Bob Lighthizer, who will be the trade representative. He also has an outspoken point of view on some of these trade activities, particularly enforcement. And then there is Peter Navarro, who heads this National Trade Council in the White House. Now, that is a new animal, and we'll have to see just how that works. But he, too, has spoken and written very candidly about China and is very hawkish. And this is going back some years. And if we look at the white paper that Wilbur Ross and Peter Navarro authored during the campaign, their concerns about China and where this relationship should move in the forward, I think is really quite clear. Now, in addition, President Trump, in his own words, and by all accounts, is a master negotiator. So it may be possible that what he has said during the campaign and what he might do subsequently is the opening round of a negotiation with President Xi about the changes the U.S. would like to see in this relationship. In any case, however we look at what is going on now and what we are seeing so far, I believe everyone ought to take seriously the determination for change that I see coming out of the president and, so far, this administration. Now, turning to the Chinese side, there are some things that China could do that we'd like to see to start the rebalancing. First, market access. The U.S. market is wide open to Chinese imports. The U.S. has been very welcoming to investment from China, which has skyrocketed in the past few years. And yet, the Chinese market still has some 100 sectors which are closed or restricted to foreign investment. Now, opening these sectors could make a good start at the rebalance. So could finishing the negotiation for the bilateral investment treaty, the BIT. I know the State Council has made some moves in the opening up direction, but we haven't seen yet the results. Second, China has a variety of tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade. I won't try to enumerate those, but a lot of us know what they are, and I think China could work at lowering those. Thirdly, China has an overcapacity problem in some industries, notably steel and aluminum. And that has caused the dumping of those products at below market prices in various countries, including the U.S. Now, the U.S. has been working for years on the steel issue. And just a few days, 10 days ago actually, Mike Froman, the outgoing trade rep, filed a complaint with the WTO alleging that China is illegally subsidizing aluminum and saying that this overcapacity problem really should be corrected. And we hope that China will work harder on correcting the overcapacity issues. The final thing I will mention here is the state-owned enterprises. Chinese companies, particularly those SOEs, often receive benefits that give them a competitive advantage over foreign companies. And the U.S. side very much supports the kind of reforms that have been put forth for the SOEs. Well, given this situation and all of the different kinds of issues that are moving around there on the economic front, there is a lot to talk about. and it's important that the two sides continue to regularly engage with each other, just as they have been doing for the past few years. There are a multitude right now, 50 or more, of governmental bilateral summits and dialogues, such as the Strategic and Economic Dialogue, the U.S. China Joint Commission on Commerce and Trade, JCCT, and many others. These, or something similar, should be continued even if the new administration wants to restructure them. And I would say, parenthetically, I think the S&ED does need to be rethought. It's gotten too big and too cumbersome, and quite frankly, I'd like to see the economic side of it just stand by itself, the way this all began a few years back. Anyway, stay tuned, we'll see what happens here. But the point is that these dialogues provide a serious and a regular way for those who lead the two largest economies in the world to talk together, identify problems, and work to find common ground to overcome them. But, there's a big but here. But there must be leadership from the top. The tone and priorities for these dialogues must come from the two leaders. Therefore, a great deal is riding on the relationship that will develop between President Trump and President Xi. I'm hopeful that the two of them will meet and talk regularly and will establish a personal relationship. They have had an introductory phone call, which from all reports was cordial, with both expressing a desire to work together. And I'm hopeful that they will look for ways and issues on which they can work together for the good of both countries as well as the global economy. And where there are disagreements, and we know already that we have some disagreements, I'm hoping that they will look for common ground to begin to find solutions. A trade war, as some are predicting, harms both countries, creates uncertainty for many other countries, and is an activity that has no place anywhere in the interconnected global world of the 21st century. So I think that this is not going to happen. I think it will be averted. Instead, I must believe that these two leaders are pragmatic, that they understand the stakes and the need to continue a stable relationship. So they should, and I hope, will start the kind of communication and negotiation process that will be a win for both countries and the global economy. Just one final observation here, and it's this. It's true that when there's so much change possible and so many moving parts, there's always opportunity in it. There's opportunity for new understanding, innovation in ways of doing things, new processes, just new thinking. If we have the will, the leaders now have the will to seize that kind of opportunity. It's a big if, but I really am hopeful that they will do that. Stay tuned for this too. And there's one more thing. All of us in this room, I believe, are here because we care about the stability of this relationship between the two countries going forward. And it has great import, not only for our countries, but for the global economy. Now, we all have friends and colleagues and networks on both sides, on the U.S. side, on the Chinese side, or both. Now is the time to motivate ourselves and our friends, colleagues, and networks so that we can all do everything we can do from where we sit to help this relationship go forward in a stable and productive manner. Thank you. Uh-oh.
First, thanks, Bruce, for that overly generous introduction, and really thank you for the strong support for the China work in general, and also my work on the Chinese leadership, especially this book. It is a really incredible honor to share the stage with Secretary Franklin and to have her keynote today's event. Barbara is a personal friend for many years, but more importantly, he is a great pioneer and a strategic thinker, and really in every sense of those words. From her early work in the Nixon White House to recruit women for high-level government jobs, is demonstrated in your book, and also to her efforts to normalize trade relations with PRC, and as President George H.W. Bush's Secretary of Commerce, and to her service on almost 20 international business or American business cooperation, and to promote trade and international economy. So it's really, really wonderful to have you at this critical moment. I think your remark is both realistic but also optimistic. It's, yes. It's really fascinating to. Now, in a little while, I will present as about the Chinese leadership. But I think that we want to have that opportunity to spend 10 to 15 minutes to the audience to ask you some questions, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. But let me ask the first question. President Trump certainly has a very ambitious plan for infrastructure development. Based on your experience, could he do that without China's capital, maybe even China's import? Is that realistic in today's world? Maybe change a little bit. Can China benefit from this gigantic infrastructure project from your expertise? So this is my question for you.
I've been told that China would like to engage in this infrastructure project. I would think that there will be many players in this infrastructure project. And where that goes, given everything else that President Trump has said about America first, I'm not entirely sure right now. Not entirely sure. I think this is one of the things we need to continue to watch. Mm-hmm. But I do think America is still open for investment. Mm-hmm. I don't think America first is going to change that.
So especially by the state government actually playing important role.
And we know that our state governments are often more welcoming than some others. Right. So I don't know. I think this is a very good question. And it will be something to follow as we get a little more clarity about just where this infrastructure project is going, mm-hmm. and where the funds are coming from for the governmental part of our funds.
Okay, great. So please raise your hand and also state your name and your affiliation, and also limit your question for one. Okay, John.
Thank you, Cheng-Li. Madam Secretary, you have...
Identify yourself.
Oh, John Zhang with CTI TV of Taiwan. But you have been realistic and optimistic. But if I ask you to give us a worst-case scenario, what can a trade war between the United States and China take us? Where can that take us? What is the worst-case scenario? Thank you.
I don't even want to go there. Because I really don't think, this is the optimistic, I don't mean to be Pollyanna, but there is reality does set in when people have to govern. It really does. And other influences come to bear and consequences become more apparent. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think we've got two pragmatic leaders here. Hope I'm not wrong, but I think we do. And so somehow, some way, they will find a way out of the clashing of points of view right now. But that's what negotiation is all about. is to find some common ground. So I don't want to go there and even paint a picture of a worst case. So call me optimistic, but I am.
You're also very diplomatic as well. And gentlemen.
My name is Alex. I'm from Russia, Fulbright student at George Washington University, a representative of probably the only country that's really excited about this new page in history. Myself very excited as well. I'm very sorry for that, but I'm being very happy about what's going on. But anyway, my question is about the Chinese barriers, the Chinese protectionism, the Chinese favoring of local producers, local protectionism, and other barriers that China did not pull down, which it, I guess, has made commitments to do. And at Davos, I guess, as the newly pronounced leader of the globalized world, it will probably have to set a standard in liberalization of international trade. I see a lot of people in Trump administration are sort of like ratcheting the bargaining position, almost, and even thinking about weaponizing Taiwan and many other issues. And it sounds like they want to open China. It's like a wrecking ball for genuinely opening China, just like maybe Reagan's threats against Japan were to open China. The question, I'm sorry for that. The question is, do you see that this could be as successful as Reagan's opening Japan was? Thank you.
I think I don't accept that that's what they're doing. They're openers. So I don't know how to answer that, I guess. But I don't see a wrecking ball here, at least not yet.
Well, I just follow up, and President Trump constantly or frequently during campaign compare himself with Reagan.
Well, yeah.
And as the person you worked for the administration, President Reagan before, right? Did you work also with his administration?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Is there any similarity from your perspective?
I think it's too soon to tell.
Okay.
So far, not
Okay.
too much, but it's too soon. I do think it's been amazing in a way, the alacrity with which this president has started to do things that he said he was going to do. And I think that has got to play well, certainly, to the people who voted for him. Now, where this goes, and will it be a sustained level of activity? Because things get tougher after a while. You can do a few things, but then he needs the Congress to do some things. Excuse me, some things, or to at least help to implement his ideas. And there are other forces that come to bear. I think it's a little too soon to make any big pronouncements. But I would leave it at that. I've been, I guess, both impressed and amazed so far at the force and the determination and the alacrity with which he has gone after some of this stuff, like TPP,
Sure.
like anything. One other thing, you were getting at a little bit of something that I didn't say, that I think concerns U.S. business people, and that is this. If there is tension in the relationship, I'm now moving over to the other side of it, to the strategic or whatever, the South China Sea or whatever kinds of things might happen. When there's tension, it causes, I think, business people to get nervous, and it causes uncertainty. And that kind of thing could impact the economic relationship.
Okay,
That
great.
was the point I just wanted to make.
I probably will take a few, then probably will close very soon. Yes, the young lady first. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Dr. Lee and Secretary Franklin. I'm Jiang Ning Lee with Shenzhen Media Group. So the U.S. has just pulled out of TPP, and Chinese Foreign Minister also said immediately afterwards that China has made good progress on RCEP negotiations. So in your opinion, is it likely that China will complete the negotiations in the near future? And what does it mean for the economy in China and in the Asia Pacific? Thank
Yeah,
you.
we will take a few questions together. Yeah, the gentleman next.
Okay,
Yes. Hold on. Maybe probably together.
Oh,
After these three
okay.
questions. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Evil Board. I'm a portfolio manager for Raymond James. So, but my question is kind of driven by your comment, which I find interesting, that you believe Donald Trump is pragmatic. Now, what do you feel from your either personal experience with the team that is engaged with him, or maybe overtly that drives you to think that he's going to approach things in a pragmatic way?
Okay. Last question, Mr. Chen.
Hi, I'm Chen Weihua, China Daily. You just quoted President Xi's poetic, remarks in Davos. So, the impression about Donald Trump is going to retreat from globalization and free trade. So, what do you think, the leadership in global trade, free trade, globalization is going to look like in the Trump era? What role China could play and what it takes for China to play that role? Thank you.
Yeah, three questions. TPP and pragmatist as president, and president as pragmatist. And last one is China's leadership, or any leadership, in the global integration.
Let me start with pragmatic. And the reason that I think that is because of the business empire that he has built. Got to be pragmatic to have done that. So, and I don't see him as an ideological person, the way some Republicans are ideological. I do not see that. I see him as someone who wants to get results. And if you want to get results, I think you have to be pragmatic and you have to negotiate and you have to do what he's done. So that's where my comment about that comes from. TPP, let's see. Yeah, I have to say I've been a supporter of TPP, but it seems as though that support on both sides of the aisle seems to have evaporated or lessened. I do, and I don't know what you were asking about RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic. I don't know where China is in the process, or those countries. That's an agreement that's not as high a level agreement as TPP would have been. If the U.S. is not going to be engaged in TPP, I do not believe we can just walk away from our other trading partners in Asia. There's some big countries there, Japan being one. So I think that the U.S. will have to, whether it's bilateral or something else, have some kinds of relationships with some of those other countries, if absent the TPP situation. What was the
last one about international
leadership. Well, I think this remains to be seen. I do believe that the two biggest economies in the world are both going to have to shoulder some leadership here. But the U.S. still is the largest economy in the world. And it underscores the reason why these two largest economies must come to some common ground on some of these issues that are dividing them. I mean, it's to me, there is no other choice. There is no other choice.
Is it okay to take one more question? Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, the young lady.
So, thank you, Dr. Chen Li. This is Leah from VOA. You did mention, Madam Franklin, you did mention the newly established the White House National Trade Council. I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about this new organization. What kind of a role it's going to play in, in the U.S. trade policy towards China? How it's going to work with the other government agencies that deals with trade relationship with China? Thank you.
Well, if I knew that, I would be a mind reader. I think it remains to be seen, and this is something to watch. This is new. And another element here, as we have to watch going forward, besides the two leaders and their relationships, are the relationships among these other players who are also new to this ship, which be the Commerce Secretary, the Trade Rep, and Peter Navarro. Now, those people haven't all worked together before, and we've got to see how all of that's going to work and whether how they work with each other and how they do what the president wants them to do. And I have no answer about how all that's going to work. But this is one of the kinds of things that I think we all have to be watching as this administration goes forward and as these people actually get into their jobs. They're not all in their jobs yet either. So I think we have to see. Lighthizer still has I don't know if that hearing's even been set, has it? Does anybody know? He has not had a confirmation hearing yet. Wilbur Ross is not yet confirmed. I expect he will be soon. But so we've got to watch all of these relationships and how everybody works together. I'm one of these people who believes that relationships count. Relationships count. Leadership counts. There's just some really basic stuff. Tone at the top counts from my corporate world, getting back to leadership count.
Well,
counting.
you said so well. Leadership count, public discourse count, public policy count. I mean, you're absolutely right that it's still so early and too early that he has been White House for a few days.
Yeah, well,
and of course, there's a lot of adjustment, there's a lot of learning curve, and also, along the way, as you see, in almost every administration, there will be a learning curve. But for him, of course, we should give him some time and etc. But what you said is very, very important. You lay out the ground, lay out the issues, and also express the importance, and also at the 21st century, the global economy should look like, and also you constantly emphasize the win-win. Now, I'm sure that our panel list also have some experts on economic affairs. They will continue to address issue. I apologize for some of the audience that I cannot, because of time concern, and also Secretary also has some other engagement. You also have a very busy week. And hope that
staying to listen to you.
Besides, you probably also will look at the Twitters from the president in some music.
We need to see what's happened since we left.
Okay, but again, thank you for joining us today, and also for sharing your really incredible wisdom at this critical moment in world history, especially on world trade. I mean, this kind of a regime that is still unfolding. And I want the audience to join me. Thank you again for sharing with us.
Thank you. Okay.